You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alun Parry. Imagine that you go speed dating, and on a speed dating thing you have a couple of minutes with each person, and then you move on to the next one and move on to the next one, and so you only have a couple of minutes in order to figure the other person out. And yet what people tend to find is that they know really quickly whether they feel an attraction or whether they feel the opposite. And we're quite simple creatures, us humans. We can overcomplicate ourselves sometimes, but we're pretty straightforward. And one of our more straightforward mechanisms is that mechanism, like in the speed dating, of towards something or away from something. That if we like something or something appeals to us, we'll move towards it. And if something puts us off in some way, we'll move away from it. And it's a good question, really, isn't it? Because are we always moving towards the thing that we want? Or are we sometimes moving away? So I want to look at three different things in this podcast. First, I want to look at the concept of the question of the movie. Secondly, I want to look at the issue of what it is that we want. And finally, I want to look at the next small action and how that can shape our behaviour as well. So let's start with the first one, the question of the movie. You know, if you study story and if you study things like plays and movies and things like that, you'll notice that in a story structure, round about the middle of the story is something that screenwriters will refer to as the question of the movie. Now, by this point of the movie, we know what the hero is setting out to do. And so the big question of the movie is essentially, are they going to succeed or are they not? Are they going to win the World Series? Are they going to form the relationship? Are they going to take over the company? Whatever that story happens to be, the question of the movie is, are they going to succeed? Are they going to get what they want? Or are they not? And so that leads me to ask, what's your question? What's the question of your movie? And does each action move you towards a yes or towards a no? You see, in a play or in a film, what will happen is that certain events will happen in the life of the hero. And those events will either move them away from their goal or move them towards. And in a movie, sometimes that'll be things that they do and sometimes it'll be external events. But their goal, of course, is always to try and move forward. So as you're making decisions and choices in life, it's an interesting benchmark that once you have the question of your movie, does each action actually move you towards a yes or towards a no? Are the decisions that you're making getting you closer to what you want or further away? Now, in terms of what the question of the movie is, that brings us to our second point, which is, well, what is it that we actually want? In the movie of our lives, who is it that we want to be? What is it that we want to accomplish? Now, I say the movie of our lives. In actual fact, our lives are a whole collection of movies because we've got a whole load of various things that we're moving towards and hoping for. But whatever it is, if you were to pick one of those and assume that, there was a movie on that, what is it that we want in each area of our lives? What do we want in our career? What do we want for ourselves financially or health-wise or in terms of our self-development? What do we want in terms of our relationships, our friendships? Who is it that we want to be? And how do we want ourselves to be at the end of the movie? And again, the question is, are we moving towards that or are we moving away from that? And it links in quite nicely, doesn't it, to that idea of the question of the movie, because by getting clearer on what it is that we want in those areas, It allows us to really understand better what the question of our movie actually is. And one of the reasons why it's important to think in this sense is, are we moving towards it or are we moving away from it? Is because it's often when we're in pursuit of the thing that we want that our anxieties arise. And then when we start feeling anxious, we'll start to get all these kind of thoughts and predictions and concerns and worries. And in order to soothe the discomfort of that, we'll often start moving away from what we want. And in that brief moment, as we move away from what we want, it is quite soothing. But sadly, because it takes us away from what we really want, it also makes us miserable as well. And so having that as a benchmark, are we moving towards the things that we value? Or are we allowing ourselves and our anxieties to chase us away from those? It gives us a little bit of a way to hold our decisions up to some sort of objective, independent scrutiny. As I'm at this crossroads and my anxiety is asking me to go backwards, is that really what I want to do, or do I want to push through it and get to the point where I actually live according to the life that I want to live, to be the person that I want to live, to get what I want from life, the things that I do? So we've looked at the question of the movie, and we've looked at what it is that we want and whether we're moving towards or away from it. And that brings us to our final point, which is the issue of the next small action, because it can be difficult, can't it? It's not always easy to be moving towards the thing that we want. And tiny actions can be one thing which is really, really helpful in doing that. So let me give you an example of what I mean. And it's a really tiny example, but it's something that happened to me today. And I decided that one of the things I really needed to do is I needed to do my laundry today, because after all, I wanted things to wear a little bit later on in the week, and I couldn't wear them if they were still dirty. And yet doing the laundry is not the nicest job. It's not the most, of all the distractions in my world that could stop me doing the laundry, well, there's plenty of them, let me tell you. So what did I do? I did the next small action. I took my laundry bag and I took it downstairs from where it lives and I hung it on my kitchen doorknob. Now, in and of itself, that still wasn't doing the laundry, but you can see that step actually moved me closer to my goal. Because after all, even though it was only a tiny step, it was a tiny step forward, because there it was now reminding me to say, come on then, put the clothes in the washing machine. And of course, once I've done that tiny step forward, and I've now got a laundry bag dangling on the door of my kitchen, it kind of, well, what else am I going to do? Am I going to leave that there forever? Well, what I actually did was I did the laundry. Now, the reason I mention that is that had I have left it there, it would have been very, very easy for me to overlook. And not just out of bloody mindedness either, but because things are easy to overlook, aren't they? And yet by doing that one small step towards what I wanted to accomplish, that one small step actually helped me immensely in terms of getting it done. So let's have a recap on the 3 ideas we've looked at here. We started, didn't we, looking at that speed dating example, where we either move towards somebody or we move away from them, that we're not as complicated as we think we are sometimes, that we kind of move towards and away things. And we applied that to 3 key ideas. The first one is the question of the movie. That halfway through any movie, that's the question that's put. Is this person going to succeed or not? And then by our decisions, we will either step closer to a yes, or we will push ourselves towards a no. And in those decisions, it gives us a benchmark, a way of measuring what we're doing as to whether they're good decisions, whether they're helpful, whether they're resourceful choices. Because if we want that thing, then we need to be doing things to move us closer to yes, and notice when we're about to take an action that will move us away from yes. We looked as well at just checking out what it is that we want. Who do we want to be? What are the things that are important to us in the different areas of our life? Because again, that can act as a benchmark, especially when our anxieties crop up and invite us to just do something else instead. It'll be easier. It won't be as difficult. We won't have to deal with these jangly feelings. And yet what our anxieties do is invite us away from the thing that we want. And so again, it provides a really useful, this towards or away from kind of mechanism, provides a useful way of assessing the choices that we make, and might just help us in those moments of difficulty to push forward into what we really want. And then that final idea to help us push forward is those tiny steps that I'm so fond of. These tiny habits, these small next actions. And we saw that even just carrying a laundry bag from upstairs to downstairs and hanging it on the kitchen door actually moved me closer to the thing that I was trying to accomplish. And it makes me wonder, what other tiny actions could I be taking today, tomorrow, or over the next week that will move me closer to the thing that I want as well? So thanks very much for listening. If you found it useful, then please do share it so others can find some benefit as well. If you'd like to work with me directly, one-to-one, then you can find me at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. My name's Alun Parry. And of course, even though I'm based in Liverpool, you don't have to be, because I work online with video and also by telephone call as well. And of course, subscribe to the podcast because it's completely free and it means that you'll never miss an episode again. And while I'm talking about stuff that's available, go and check out the website liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk, because I've got a brand new free report there which is called The Depression Era. And it talks about something that people never really talk about with depression, but I think is really, really important, and I think will change your view on depression, and it's completely free as well. So go to liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk in order to pick that up as well. So again, thanks for listening, and I'll be back again with another one.